This is one of those cases that it goes so much further than just one person. It's about power, it's about secrecy, and it's about what happens when the very systems we count on for justice, well, they get put on trial themselves. So let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's August 10th, 2019. We're at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a federal jail right in the heart of Manhattan. And what happens here? In the early morning hours is the single event that kicks off a firestorm of questions that honestly we're still grappling with today.
And really, it all boils down to this one question. What happens when accountability just collapses before a trial can even begin? I mean, what does justice even look like when a defendant never has to face a jury? That question, right there, is the thread that's going to pull us through every single detail, every failure, and all the unanswered questions that came after. All right, so Section 1, a cell in Manhattan. Let's start with what we actually know, the hard facts from that morning inside the special housing unit. And here it is, the stark reality. Inside cell 220, Jeffrey Epstein is found unresponsive. We're talking about one of the most high-profile federal defendants in the entire country. He was waiting for his trial on these incredibly serious sex trafficking charges. And now, he's dead, in his cell. And right away, immediately, red flags started popping up everywhere. The circumstances just didn't feel right. First, we hear the guards hadn't done the required 30-minute checks. Then, we find out that not one, but two surveillance cameras right outside his cell just happened to malfunction. You can see how the foundation for all the public distrust was laid, literally within hours. Now, this is absolutely crucial to get straight. The formal, official cause of death determined by the New York City medical examiner was suicide. That's the fact on the books. And that official conclusion, well, that's the anchor point. Everything else, all the questions, all the investigations, they all branch out from that one finding. So that leads to the next big question, right? How did Jeffrey Epstein even end up in that cell to begin with? To really understand that, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going back more than a decade. Okay, take a look at this timeline. You see that big gap in the middle? For 11 years, this incredibly controversial plea deal down in Florida basically shielded Epstein from any more federal prosecution. That is, until 2019, when a brand new indictment in New York yanked him right back into the system. And that 2008 deal, wow, it was the source of so much controversy, and for good reason. It was negotiated with federal prosecutors, and get this, not only did it give Epstein a shockingly lenient sentence, but it also granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators. It just slammed the door shut on any wider investigation back then. But then, boom, 2019, everything changes. Federal prosecutors in New York hit him with brand new charges. Sex trafficking of minors. And this time was different. A judge denied him bail, saying he was too much of a flight risk. For the first time, it really truly seemed like a public trial was finally going to happen. So that brings us right back to the breakdown in custody. Because his death, it didn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It happened inside the walls of a federal facility, a place that's supposed to be secure. This became the burning question for everybody, for the public, for Congress, you name it. How on earth is a defendant this high profile allowed to die while in federal custody? The whole point of the system was to make sure he got to trial, and it just failed, plain and simple. So the Department of Justice's Inspector General did this huge investigation, and what they found was just a cascade of failures. It's almost unbelievable. You have guards falsifying records, those two cameras outside his cell malfunctioning. He'd been taken off suicide watch, and the entire unit was chronically, dangerously understaffed. This wasn't just one little mistake. It was a complete and total systemic breakdown. And here's the bottom line from that official investigation. The Inspector General found extensive, profound negligence and incompetence, but no evidence of a criminal conspiracy to murder him. So, while speculation and conspiracy theories were, running wild, investigators were clear. They found nothing to support the idea of foul play or homicide. Okay, so with the criminal case against Epstein himself now dismissed, the whole search for accountability had to pivot. It shifted over to the civil courts. And this is what led to this huge moment, the unsealing of thousands and thousands of pages of documents that had been hidden away for years. Now, before we go any further, it's really, really important that we understand the difference here. In a criminal case, the prosecution has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a super high bar. But a civil suit? That's usually between individuals, and it has a lower standard of proof. It's typically about money, about damages, not about sending someone to prison. And this, right here, might be the single most important thing to remember about all those unsealed documents. Just because someone's name shows up in a court file, it does not mean they're guilty of a crime. Seriously, people's names appeared in things like depositions or flight logs for all sorts of reasons. Making that distinction is absolutely essential if we're going to understand this information without just jumping to conclusions. You know, when Epstein died, what we really lost was the trial itself. All that testimony, all that evidence, it would never be tested in a criminal court. Survivors would never get their day in court to face him. And that's just a massive, gutting loss of public accountability. So where does all this leave us? What's the lasting impact here? Because this case, it obviously didn't end in that jail cell. Its shockwaves are still being felt, still reshaping how we talk about justice and power. Now, some measure of justice did eventually come. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate, was arrested. She was tried and she was convicted on charges related to sex trafficking. The result? A 20-year sentence in federal prison.
And if you look at this timeline, you can see this story is far from over. I mean, Maxwell was convicted in 2021, the jail itself, the MCC, was actually shut down in 2023, and courts are still unsealing documents even now. This case is not going away.
Ultimately, what this whole saga did was tap into this really deep-seated fear that a lot of people have, that there are two systems of justice in this country. One for the rich, the powerful, the connected, and another one for everybody else. And for so many people, his death, while in custody, just cemented that belief.
And so that leaves us right here with this final lingering question. When the guards fail, and the procedures fail, and even the history of plea deals fail, who is actually accountable? Because it's not just one person who escapes justice in a situation like that. The entire system ends up under this huge shadow of doubt. And that's something we all have to wrestle with.